your agenda.
Come on.
Okay.
Getting us some city information.
Oh, Jesus.
Anyway, it's 7 o'clock. We'll call this meeting to order. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Reading of the call.
Dear Supervisor, please be advised that the Trumbull County Board of Supervisors will meet at 7 p.m. on September 16th, 2024 in the County Boardroom. All County Board members' claims are due in the County Clerk's office by noon on September 6th, 2024, so they can be prepared for Audit Committee approval. Sincerely, Paul Severson, County Clerk.
Okay.
Oh, are you going to announce this part?
Oh,
Oh, my gosh. It's missing.
yeah, I need to.
Nobody said that.
What?
I'm still going to do it. Roll call.
Yeah.
That's number 3. It's on here.
Oh, there it is. Okay.
Oh.
You got to do this.
Oh,
I
open.
go,
Up there.
I thought we did it all at once.
no.
Well, anyway, open meeting law requirements been met with proper posting and notification. We'll go with the roll call.
Bridget Turner. Stacy Klein.
Here.
Richard Seisha.
Here.
Lori Severson.
Here.
Andy Todd.
Here.
Richard Anderson.
Here.
Kevin Adams.
Here.
Dick Miller.
Here.
Kevin Whalen.
Here.
John Austin.
Here.
Don Waldera.
Here.
Robert Becker.
Here.
Renee Lyon.
Here.
Kellen Nelson.
Here.
David Larson.
Here.
Jeannie Nutter.
Here.
Ron Johnson.
Yes.
16, 1 missing.
Okay. We have a 12-item agenda. Are there any changes?
I'll second.
Was made by Mr. Johnson, second amendment. Supervisor Nutter. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That's carried. Adoption of the previous minutes.
That's what's missing.
Move to approve.
I don't have the minutes.
Motion by Supervisor Waldera. Second. Seconded by Supervisor Todd? Oh, Seisha? Close, it was in the right direction. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That's carried. Appearances, we're gonna start with the audit. Cheyenne Hedinger? Cheyenne?
Gotta sign this.
If you brought your folders with you, be handy.
They all have it on their computers,
Okay.
Okay.
in their packets.
Great. Well, thank you for having me tonight.
Did you push the button there?
I think I did.
It's on.
It's red?
She's on.
Okay.
Okay.
Get as close as you can, because people at home want to hear it.
Okay. Well, thank you for having me here tonight. I am Cheyenne Hediger. I'm from Baker Tilly, partner in our Eau Claire office, and oversee the county's annual financial statement audit. We did review this with the Exec Finance Committee earlier this month in a little more detail, so I'll try to keep it somewhat high level tonight, but if there are any questions, please feel free to ask. So yes, I do think you have these slides in your packet, but I'll have them on screen too, so. Back at the end of July, we did issue 2 reports, the financial statements and the reporting and insights letter. We will have one more report to issue yet this month on the expenditures of federal and state awards. So we're just finishing that up yet. But I will cover those first 2 reports briefly here tonight. So within the financial statements is the independent auditor's report. This is about the 3 or so pages near the front of the financials that are actually ours as the auditors. The opinion this year, those few pages will look very much like last year if you saw them then. We did issue an unmodified opinion, also known as a clean opinion, stating that the financial statements are presented fairly in accordance with GAAP. Management's responsibility over the financial reporting is for the preparation and fair presentation of the financial statements, and designing and implementing internal controls over those financial reporting. And then also evaluating if there are any conditions or events that would raise substantial doubt about the ability to continue as an operating function. Then within that auditor's report, it's also the details of the auditor's responsibility. So we, as your auditors, our objectives are to obtain a reasonable assurance about whether those financial statements are free from material misstatement. A reasonable assurance is not absolute. We are sampling transactions. We do exercise our professional judgment. We use professional skepticism in our procedures. We gain an understanding of the internal controls and then design our audit procedures based on those evaluations. We also evaluate the appropriateness of the accounting policies and the significant estimates, and also look at those same conditions or events that could raise substantial doubt about the ability to continue. There's then a couple more sections at the end of the auditor's report regarding other matters, so looking at the required supplementary information and the supplementary information, just detailing a little bit more about our procedures there. And then the final section is the other reporting required by the government auditing standards. That does relate to those federal and state awards, but we do look first at the financial reporting and making sure that there are appropriate procedures and controls over financial reporting. So now I will dive into a few of the numbers. These are the same graphs and slides and such that I did cover with the Exec Finance Committee, so sorry to those that this is a repeat too, but looking at the general fund balance for 2023, this really is one of the most important metrics within your financial statements to help assess the health of the organization. Your fund balance allows for adequate cash flows for timing of receipt of different revenues, and also gives some flexibility to respond to budgetary needs or unexpected expenses. So the general fund can be broken down into these 5 categories listed in order of liquidity and restrictions. So we've got the non-spendable category, and that's what is in the a non-spendable format, and that is made up of tax certificates and deeds and some prepaid expenses. There is no restricted fund balance for 2023. The committed amounts is those which you as a board have put aside by formal action. So that 1.2 million relates to the workers' comp reserves. The assigned is also those that have been set aside for specific purposes, just not quite as restrictive to use, but that's mostly your non-lapsing accounts and any budgetary carryovers to the next year. And then unassigned is the residual positive balance of the fund balance. So I'd like to compare the fund balance as a percentage of the expenditures for the year. So for 2023, you had committed, assigned, and unassigned, so kind of that available to use at your board's discretion. That balance was about $10.1 million. And comparing to general fund expenditures for the year of just under 17 million, that leaves a percentage of your available fund balance as a percentage of expenditures at 60%. You see the red line here is the GFOA recommended minimum, and that's about 2 months worth. We like to say 6 months is probably a little more healthy balance to carry. That 60% represents about 7 months worth for the county, so a very adequate balance Again, allowing some flexibility in budgetary needs and any unexpected expenditures that come up. All right, looking at the general fund income statement for the year. So what activity for the year led into the decrease in the fund balance. So general fund did have a net loss essentially of almost 1.8 million. But in comparing that to the budget that you passed of a planned loss of 7.2 million, performance was much better than budgeted for. Some of those major variances to budget on the revenue side, you did have about $4 million of bond proceeds that were not budgeted for, and then about $482,000 of sales tax revenue that was over budget amounts. And then on the expenditure side, similarly, there was can't read my notes now. There was the transfer out of those bond proceeds to the highway, and that was probably the largest variance, and then offset by other departments that underspent or did not exhaust their non-spendable or non-lapsing balances. Excuse me. And there are more details. I have some page number references here. Within the big financial statement book, if you were to look at page 57, there is a more detailed budget to actual schedule there. Looking at the cash and investment balances, so these, again, are point in time, December 31 of 23, and then the previous 2 years. The increase in the unrestricted cash, largely due to healthcare center, their cash was up about 1.7 million. That is actually audited by separate auditors, so I don't have a lot of information there, but we do pull their numbers into the full county report. The restricted cash, you can see, went down quite a bit from 21 to 22 and now to 23, and that's just the spend down of your jail bond proceeds as that project was completed. And then the fiduciary funds are not monies that the county has control over spending. It's amounts that you collect for other entities. So one example is the Register of Deeds fees that come in and then get passed on to the state. All right, and then looking at general long-term debt, you did have outstanding debt, general obligation debt at the end of the year of just under $74 million. The change there, you did issue $4,265,000 of new GO bonds, offset by planned payments of $4,578,000. So not a big change in the overall debt balance. But the GO debt capacity, which is 5% of your equalized value of the taxable property, did go up quite significantly. So it is showing that you have a rising tax base, which is great. And then your percentage of debt limit used at the end of the year was about 45%. Then just a quick look at the other funds of the county, the special revenue funds. Not a lot of changes here year over year. The opioid settlement was a new fund in 2022. That fund balance has just grown as you've received some of those settlement payments and not yet had expenditures there. And then the notice of discharge fund at the bottom of the special revenue funds, that's really just timing of when those grant funds have now come in. Most of that project, I believe, is complete or substantially complete. So as you continue to receive those grant funds, that should go down to zero. The debt service fund, pretty steady. You levy in there for your debt payments. You did have about $1 million of the debt premium from the jail bonds was used to pay the interest in 2023, so not as much tax levy had to go in there to make that payment. The capital projects fund, Again, you could see that fund balance decreasing over the last 3 years, and that is just, again, due to the spending down of those jail bonds that were revenue a few years ago, and as you've completed the project. All right, then a quick look at highway. I think I keep bumping it here, sorry, papers. So again, highway is the only enterprise fund that we audit. The farm and healthcare center are within the financials, but those are audited separately by Whipfly. So I just point out some of the highway fund amounts here. At the end of 2023, highway numbers looked really great. There was, positive cash of almost $3.5 million. The working capital, so your current assets exceeded your current liabilities by $6.5 million. And then overall net position increased I have it written here, 3.6 million. And looking at, activity for the year, it was really the transfer from general fund to highway was up about 1.6 million over 2022. So I think it was about 4.4 something million up to about 6.5 million in 2023, which is part of that planned transfers of new debt that you get usually in December, and it transfers over in January. So a lot of timing difference there. And then just overall expenses in the highway fund were down almost 1.8 million from 22 to 23. So fed into that positive change there. Okay, and then the final slide on numbers, I believe. Just another one looking at the debt service of the governmental funds. So total expenditures for the year, just about 48 million. And we take out the capital expenditures to get to a more true just operating expense. So that was about 33.5 million for the year. And when we look at how much of that was debt service, so your principal and interest payments, made up about 14.6% of your total expenses. If you were to be going out for rated bonds, one of the metrics that the bond agencies look at is this expenditures of your debt compared to the rest of the operating expense. And the bond rating agencies recommend a maximum of 20%. So, for the last 3 years, the county's been well below that. So that's a great result. Okay, so the second report that I mentioned that we issued was the Reporting and Insights letter. It's got a nice green cover if you do have your books. This goes over the required communications and also gives kind of a summary of how the audit process went. So for 2023, we again had an internal control material weakness over financial reporting. That's been the same for several years, and due to us as your auditors prepare the financial statements, we help with some year-end journal entries and just help get the records to be materially correct. So we do have to report that one. I would say 85 to 90% of my clients have that same material weakness in the government space, so not uncommon to see. Some of our other required communications, the last few pages of that letter are the two-way communication regarding the next audit. So if we were to continue with us, just goes over the nature, scope, and timing of the audit, planned procedures. Also encourages you as the board, if you were to ever have questions or concerns that you felt we as the auditors needed to know, we do encourage you to reach out at any time. We do always talk with a board member each year during the audit process, but it doesn't need to be limited to that if you were to ever have concern. And then pages 7 through 10 are the various audit communications. So any of the corrected and uncorrected misstatements are attached within the letter. We detail out the significant estimates that we identified including the self-insured workers' comp liability, the pension calculations, and depreciation. And if there were any difficulties, disagreements, consultations outside of the audit team during the year or during the audit process, we would report those to you. But happy to report there were no difficulties, disagreements. Everybody's very cooperative, very responsive to our questions. So always a fairly smooth process. And then new accounting standards affecting 2024 and beyond. Thankfully, we have a couple quiet years of new standards, so shouldn't be anything, your financials shouldn't look real new, anything new in them over the next couple of years. And with that, I just want to give a big thank you to Paul and his team and everybody at the county. We ask a lot of questions. We disrupt county operations for about 2 weeks when we're on site. And then for, 3 more months after, we're still having follow-up questions and things that we need to review and go through. So just always really appreciate the cooperation that we get here, and excited to wrap up another year of the audit. And then the final slide then is my contact information and my senior manager. So if you would have any time you wanted to reach out, you have our contact.
Any questions on the audit? Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Next on the agenda, domestic violence presentation by Sally Miller.
Well, it is October, it's Domestic Violence Awareness Month.
It's coming to be out. There we go.
Now you're good.
You'd think I'd know this after 10
Yeah,
years
you're
on the
right.
board.
Yeah.
October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and we have begun asking the county board chair to do a proclamation to recognize that, and in advance of the month, rather at the end of the month, which has happened previously. So I appreciate the time and allowing us to be on the agenda. Domestic violence is an issue that does affect every community, every neighborhood, every school, every corner of our county, of every state has domestic violence happening. There's domestic violence, there's child abuse, there's elder abuse, there's abuses, there's family violence, there's intimate partner violence. It's all there, and it's all here. We have 2 full-time staff here, and we are kept incredibly busy. I left some little purple pins. They're ribbons, purple ribbons. I wanted to explain to you why we use purple. Back during the 100 years ago, when women were protesting and marching for the right to vote, they adopted white gowns and then purple sashes, and that was that was what they wore, seeking freedom. In the 60s and 70s, there were no such thing as domestic violence shelters. The first one opened in 1978, right? Yeah, and we didn't even get one here until the 90s. But so what women who were trying to flee dangerous, abusive situations took part in an underground railroad in which they would be transported and taken to safe places and go along the way. This is pre-internet, this is pre-cell phones, and so what they did is they used purple ribbons and they put them on their antennas. And so they would agree that they were going to meet in a parking lot of a store or a mall, and then they'd drive around until they saw the car with a purple ribbon, and that was their sign that that person was the person that they were looking for. And so, just an interesting little bit of trivia. I told you the story last year of how my sister fled an abusive marriage, and that was what happened. She traveled across the country, going from mall to mall and grocery store to grocery store parking lot, looking for purple ribbons on antennas. So I can attest to you that in 1977, that was what was happening. And it got her safely to Montana from Florida, where she met and married the man she's been married to since, in a very safe, secure, happy marriage. And so we recognize the history of the purple ribbon, and so we would ask you that if you don't want to wear the ribbon, please give it to someone who might, and wear it during the month and wear it during the year. I wanted to just say one more thing, and then I'm going to ask the executive director, Ann, to speak. pretty much every department in the county deals with domestic violence, people with trying to come free from it. It's not just law enforcement, it's not just the criminal justice system, it's not just human services. Child support was dealing with it. You had Register of Deeds, you had clerks. The county clerk would have people coming in needing help with things. When I think about the times I come here to the courthouse with a client, with somebody who needs something from the system to be put onto that journey, to move further on their journey to safety, there's not really an office that I haven't walked through the doors of with a client. And I'm happy to say that we always are met with very helpful folks. But I wanted you to be aware that the departments that are in this county are doing that work. It's not just human services, it's not just law enforcement. All of them at some point are called upon to participate and to assist and to be part of the system response to help somebody move from a dangerous situation to a more safe situation and hopefully to a safer situation. And so I just wanted you to be aware of that, because the work that you do here to support your departments also is work done to support victims of abuse, whatever kind of abuse it is. As somebody who's been doing this work for 12 years, I know this for a fact. And so I did want to share that and thank you for your support. I know that there's always been a sense of trust and urgency when I come up here that the system will respond, and it really rarely ever lets me down. And if it does, of course, you'll know about it. But it doesn't. It really does respond, and I think that really is a credit to our, not just our system, but also to the people that come here and choose to work here and choose to serve the people in their communities. So now I would like to introduce Ann, our executive director, and do that.
Good evening, all. Thank you for allowing us to come talk with you tonight. And I recognize a couple of faces because I've worked with you recently on how can we do things better for Trempealeau County, right? And we talked about mental health issues and domestic violence and, securing needs. And it's great to be a part of that. And we thank you for allowing us to participate with that. I'm just going to go off with what Sally said a little bit about the work that we do here, and we couldn't do it without all of you. I just want to share with you Kayla Matheson, and she is your director at the Arcadia Library, Independence Library. Kayla has been on the board of directors of New Horizons for several years, and she often does referrals of persons that she's worked with at the library to our services. So it does all just kind of coordinate in together. So, and then with us tonight too, we have, besides Sally, is Kendi Gomez, and Kendi's been with us for about 1.5 years now, and speaks Spanish. So she is wonderful with our Latina population up here, because we see a lot of domestic violence happening within that population. So basically, I will just say thank you for helping us and directing people to us when they need us, because we couldn't do it without you. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions of either one? Then we have a proclamation for the county. In the county of Trempealeau, in recognition of the important work done by survivors, domestic violence programs, and victim service providers, I urge all citizens to actively participate in the scheduled activities and programs sponsored by New Horizons Shelter and Outreach Centers and other community organizations to work toward the elimination of intimate partner violence. Whereas in just one day across the U.S. and its territories, more than 70,000 victims of domestic violence seek services from domestic violence programs and shelters. That same day, more than 11,000 requests for services, including emergency shelter, housing, transportation, child care, and legal representation, cannot be provided because programs lack resources to meet the victim's needs. Whereas the impact of the domestic violence is wide-ranging, affecting directly affecting individuals and society as a whole, here in this community, throughout the United States and the world, and whereas racism, homophobia, transphobia, ageism, discrimination-based physical ability, nationally and other factors help perpetuate domestic violence and make finding safety even more difficult for some victims. Whereas the need for safe housing continues to be rated as survivors' most urgent need, and whereas Trempealeau County joins the others across Wisconsin and the nation supporting victims of domestic violence, as well as local programs, state coalitions, national organizations, and other agencies nationwide who are committed in increasing public awareness of domestic violence and sending a clear message to abusers that domestic violence is not tolerated in Trempealeau County. Whereas domestic violence impacts millions of people each year, but it can be prevented. Preventing domestic violence requires the collective voice and the powers of individuals, families, institutions, and systems, adding a valuable and powerful component to the transforming of our communities. Now therefore, I, John Austin, Trempealeau County Board Chair, hereby do proclaim October 2024 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And looking for approval for that proclamation.
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded to approve the proclamation. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, that's carried. Administrator update.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kevin, could you stop sharing your screen so that I could share? Is he in the office there?
Is anybody in there?
Yeah, he's doing it right now.
Okay, there we go.
There you go.
Thank you. So, all right. A lot of questions, kind of, around what does the budget process look like this year? And so I just wanted to back up a little bit and talk about this process of bringing in a county administrator. So in May of 2020, the Exec Finance Committee met and talked about, they passed a unanimous resolution to form an ad hoc committee to work toward bringing on a city administrator, or sorry, county administrator. Oh, why does that keep doing that? There we go. And so that referenced even materials that were created in 2016 and 17 by a committee. So it's been a lot of discussion along the way and how to get to the point of bringing in a county administrator. So then in May 18th of 2020, the full county board passed that resolution without amendment about, bringing on the ad hoc committee and starting that discussion. As a part of that, research and trying to determine moving down this path, a questionnaire was sent out to all 72 counties within the state, asking questions about, what value do you find with the county administrator? What are the pitfalls? What do you recommend? And 17 counties responded with very detailed answers to questions and made comments regarding that. And so you have a lot of reports that came out of that at that time. Many of those respondents noted the advantages of having a county administrator as opposed to very few disadvantages. It was very positive, and some are nodding their heads and remembering that. Major advantages included management of department heads and budgets, a more streamlined decision-making process, and overall consistency of operations. One disadvantage noted was the perception of relinquished power among county board members. And that's where we're stepping into right now when we talk about the budget. And so I want to bring forward to you that this is a different process. And you've brought me into the picture, and some people more than others can experience that feeling of giving up power. That's not what I'm here to try to make you feel, but this is just a part of the process. And the process that you did in the past, looking through budgets, line by line, that doesn't continue now forward. I'm doing that. If you look at my schedule and you look at all of the meetings that I have right now, I'm sitting down with all department heads and I'm scrutinizing every single line, and I'm talking to them about those things, talking to them about their issues and what problems they're experiencing, where do they see where changes can be made and things that we could do more efficiently. So I'm having that conversation so that you don't have to have that long, drawn-out conversation, right? But it's still, some piece of that is still, again, some people are okay with that and other people aren't. I've been through this process before with the city that I worked with before, and moving from that line item piece to I'm going to give you an overview of this process I've been through and things that I'm going to share with you and where we're at and the direction that I think we should go forward. Some people, like I said, are okay with that, other people not. So what I'm just wanting to express to you is that it's okay. And I understand that. I know I've had other people that have dealt with that before, so I understand that piece. You are the elected officials that are responsible in the end for this. So if you have issues or you have questions, you are always able to call and talk with me, sit down with me. I'm going to provide extra information for those individuals that really want that information, but not as much information, because that's not the process you should have. That is not what you should be going through as you move forward. And you should have an administrator that's taking you through this process and leading you through that. So, but always just want you to be aware that you have every opportunity to please reach out, and I'll try to do whatever I can to give you information and be a part of that. I'm trying to give you the best information as possible, also by working with talented individuals that are retired government financial advisors and that have worked with government entities for a very long time as finance directors. And so that's where I'm at. I'm going to give you a copy of this ad hoc, just determination here, just so you can take a look at that. And then I'm going to go on to just, if you look at the board, this is the timeline of what we're looking at. So although I have a lot of angst around that first October 7th date, that's where I'm gonna be, and we'll have a report ready on October 7th. So it is fast and furious right now, and like I said, a lot of meetings and meeting with department heads. But that's the first time that group will see it. Then on October 14th, we have this extra meeting at 6 p.m. We're all gonna meet here, and I'm gonna present it to all of you at that time. It gets published on the 18th so that we can get it out. I think, Paul, you said it's got to be out 15 days?
Yeah, because we have to have it to the Friday before I think the 23rd is the closest to the 15 days, because we're a
Okay.
weekly paper.
Okay, so we could maybe do the we have to have it to them the 18th so it can get in the 23rd?
Yes.
Okay, got it. But all this time, right, you are able to ask questions. We are able to discern and talk about this. October 21st, and we're just going to have it at the meeting for open conversation. The November 12th is where you make your final decisions, right? And you approve it, you have discussions, or you make amendments. And that's it. And so then it's in place. So that's the schedule. I want you to feel comfortable with that. Like I said, if some people will need more information than others, and that's great. And we're going to work through it together. All right, moving on, childcare. I want to talk about, oops, not about housing yet. I'm going to talk about childcare. I'm just going to give you two articles. These are for you to take a look at today. Governor Evers put out, yep, thank you. I think I've got some stuff on the bottom here. Yeah. There you go, thank you. Governor Evers talked about DCF announces new survey finds childcare industry unable to serve 33,000 kids due to lack of staff. There's a huge problem, as we've talked about before, multiple things that create this problem. We're working to try to solve that, and not just here, but across the county. So these are conversations that if we want our employers to stay here, if we want new employers to come in, we've got to address these things because it affects us greatly in this way. So, and then there's a second article that is here that is actually from a county in Ohio. And I just want you to read that because that gives a little bit different perspective and it's related across the country. This is not just isolated to Trempealeau County. It's not just isolated to Wisconsin. It is across the United States. And Commissioner Sharon Jones, as elected to the board of the County Commissioners Association of Ohio, says, it really doesn't matter if you live in a rural county, a suburban or urban county, or a metropolitan county. It's a chronic problem, and the ability for the county or individual business to address the system failure on its own is unrealistic. This is just, again, reasons why we need to be working with our community, regional partners, and there are conversations happening now that I continue to work with people, and it's a part of that conversation yet that we talked about previous, and the possibility of what we can do here and across the county. So further conversations to come regarding that. Finally, I want to touch base on housing because this is another huge problem, and it's one that I hear about often from all of you as leaders, from community members, and so it's another area that we need to think about and address and work toward finding solutions. So housing shortage, there weren't enough homes that have been built since the Great Recession, which is over a 16-year period. In 2008, at that crash, a number of contractors left the business, and they went to go find good jobs in other places, and they never returned to the business of construction. Estimated shortage in housing units through 2030, we don't know because I don't have a housing study here, but we just know that there's housing shortages, again, across the country. This is not an issue that just happened. It's not an issue that's isolated, again, to Trempealeau County. It's not isolated to Wisconsin. It's across the United States because, again, enough houses weren't being built, and then it crashed and it never recovered, so houses have not been building at the rate that they needed to get built. So then we have an issue of supply and demand. Housing prices go up because there aren't enough, and we have more people that need houses. So housing prices are going too high. The best way to bring down housing prices is to get more stock out there. And so that's the equation of trying to figure out how do we get more stock out there, because there aren't a lot of contractors to work with. And so how does a rural county compete with cities? Because cities have generally higher tax income, that they're bringing in extra income, and they can afford the housing prices that are out there. So construction costs are rising faster than inflation and incomes. Severe labor shortages in the construction industry continue. Increase in material prices and development costs have stayed high. We have not seen that come down at all. Again, supply and demand. The growing infrastructure costs that we see on roads and all of the work that goes under to get sewer and water to every home. And then it affects also the homeowners and renters that are housing cost burdened because housing prices have gone up so much. This just talks about rising infrastructure costs and takes a look at just sewer and water and the extreme costs that have happened in also trying to find people that are gonna put in sewer and water in our communities and construction crews that will do streets. So if you take a look at all of the things that play into this, again, labor, 73% of Wisconsin construction firms have labor shortage issues that could be higher now. I'm talking with construction groups that are really struggling. Infrastructure, site development costs are rising. You know, land prices have gone up a lot. That's in the equation. And then materials, growing cost of materials and ongoing supply chain issues. This is from the Wisconsin Realtors Association. Rising construction costs means that all forms of housing are becoming more expensive and less available. This creates barriers to home ownership and to rental affordability. That's the math problem. The cost of construction is greater than what families can afford. And so what works? What do we do about that? You know, we work to figure out infrastructure costs that are offset or paid for by public-private worker partnerships. Again, working with business and working how we can partner together on these things. Looking at smaller lots and units so that it brings down the cost of the land that you're doing or that you're using. The no-cost land on community land trust and donations. Revolving loan funds, how low-interest capital can be used. Tax credits, communities identify and prepare. I can't see my last line under here.
Line is in the way.
Yeah,
What is
that's my view of the screen on here. Yeah, communities identify and prepare land for development, and so they become the developer. And tax incremental financing, that's where cities are doing this right now, and that a portion, 35% of their TID that they might form for economic development can actually be used for housing to help bring down the cost and work with the developer to fill that gap that is an issue. So anyway, I just wanted to bring this forward so that, again, that you're aware of the causes that create a lot of these issues. And again, the partnerships and the way talking with all of those individuals across the region help us to bring out solutions. So I'll bring more information as more work comes forward on that.
Rebecca,
Yes.
could you send us a copy of that PowerPoint?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Sure, thank you.
Any other questions of our administrator?
Can I get, I just want to get this timetable down. October 7th, Exec Finance meets with you and gets your proposed budget.
Right.
And then the 14th, there's a county board workshop. We're all going to be here.
And what time is that at?
What time's
6
that one?
p.m.
6
I
p.m.
know on the bottom of your agenda for tonight, it says 7, but please change that to a 6.
And then on the 21st is when the board, 10 o'clock in the morning, we meet and we got to approve it. You tentatively approve it, correct?
October 21st is, no, it's our regular board meeting.
So November 12th is the 10 o'clock one.
That's November 12th is when we approve it. But we have the regular county board meetings and the 21st of October.
Yes.
And I think we'll see
A proposed.
So you will have already seen the proposal on the 7th and the 14th. There'll be just time for questions and review anything that you would want to bring forward on the 21st.
When do we have to have it approved by?
November 12th.
November 12th.
November 12th, that's,
So on the 7th, you'll have it with you.
Correct.
I had some concerns, but if we
Yep,
have it by the 7th,
that's right.
Is that-
The exec finance committee will see it twice, but you'll see it on the 7th to begin with, yeah.
And then Paul, you'll get all of these dates on our October calendar, right? With dates and times?
We'll make sure, yes.
and then is it possible, maybe, I don't know what the board feels like, that maybe the whole board on the 7th, to give the whole board a copy of it? We know it's not gonna be perfect, but at least they would be able to understand it better when we come here on the 14th and the 10th, so that they would have a general idea. Because on the 7th, we'll only get it, so we'll first get it on the 7th, so we won't really be able to make more changes, because we won't even have any idea what's in it, the exec finance. So if we could get it at all, even a little bit beforehand too, it would be greatly appreciated, so that we could look at it. And if we, I think if the whole board could get it before the main board meeting, so at least they can look at it.
I don't know. if
Is
we'll
that
have time.
possible?
Oh.
Is that possible? I would just,
I was just saying that I was gonna send it out with the packet, but she doesn't think it will.
So you will have over a month. You'll have from October 7th till November 12th.
I think you're talking about the finance committee.
The finance
Exec
committee will.
finance will
Finance
get it on
committee's
the
the
7th.
yeah.
Oh, sure.
So the whole board will only have it for a shorter period of time, because we have to have it totally done by the 12th. And I don't want us to get into that where we're rushed and we're gonna have 10 meetings, and I just would have,
That's why we got her. We're not
I
doing
just don't wanna
it.
get us again, because we're against the one wall there, the 12th, that's
What, I'm
the
not
thing we
seeing the
have to-
12th, or November 12th, okay.
Yep.
Right, so I guess I see it as you have over a month. You're just gonna hear it on the 14th, and you're gonna hear it on the 7th, and you'll hear it again on the 14th.
Right, we will, but not the whole board, so
Right,
if
but-
we could
The whole
get
board will
the,
on the 14th.
once you get it together, if you send it out to all of us before that the 7th date, it'll be good for the exec finance, because then we could look at it and have questions that day. And then when we have the full board meeting, they'd have even longer to look at, and they may pick up some things to ask and change or whatever,
Sure.
correct?
So you're proposing that she sends it all, to all of us prior to the 7th, is what I'm
If,
getting out
if
of it.
if it's possible, yes, just because it's not a probably easy
email?
thing to read through either.
She's not
Is
sure
it,
she'll
Dick?
have it done yet.
We'll see, we'll see. We'll see how, we will see how it goes, yeah.
We are.
Yeah, yeah. And again, you're not going to be, unless you request the whole document, that's not the process. If you want to look through that line by line and get the book, that's not the process.
We have never done that in the past. It's just exec finance that saw the whole book.
Yeah.
whole board has never seen it.
No, I'm not asking for the whole book, I'm asking for
not
the
the
budget,
book.
proposed budget.
They get the.
Yes, you will get that,
Summary.
yes.
20-some pages.
It'll, should reflect also where you made cuts and where you changed, you added.
Sure.
Okay, any other questions of our administrator? Not, thank you very much.
Yeah,
Rebecca.
thank you.
Sounds good. We'll go on to 7, resolutions, personnel bargaining, exec finance committee. Additional funding for the training of a new deputy treasurer. There's a resolution for that, and Paul will read the resolution.
Whereas the current county treasurer will be retiring as of January 3rd, 2025, and whereas the current deputy treasurer will be sworn into the office of county treasurer on January 6th, 2025, and whereas the beginning of the calendar year is an extremely busy time for the county treasurer's office, and it would not allow the county treasurer to adequately train the new deputy while assuming the new duties of county treasurer. Now be it resolved that $13,517.26 be transferred from the general fund to cover salary, taxes, and benefits for a new deputy to begin employment and training around November 1st, 2024. Introduced by Personnel Bargaining Committee, Kellen Nelson, Jeannie Nutter, John Austin, Ronald Johnson, Renee Lyon. Executive Finance Committee, David Larson, John Austin, Richard Seisha, Robert Becker.
I
Motion
second.
by Supervisor Nutter, seconded by Supervisor Lyon. Did I hear that right? Okay. Any other discussion?
Question.
Go ahead.
Has the time passed for a potential write-in candidate that would mess with this?
No,
So-
that would be the Friday before the election, so that's 5, 4, 3, 2.
In the
1st of
highly
November.
unlikely event of a
1st of
write-in
November.
and the write-in would win, this would not be I don't know how that would affect this. That's
It
the
would
only-
still affect it, because you still need a,
But they wouldn't
No,
be
you
a
did
Deputy
it.
might stay as the deputy.
oh, that could be, yeah, that could be, yeah,
I see what.
But the
I-
deputy
yeah.
would still be there.
yeah. I see what you're saying. yeah.
November 1st,
Oh,
November 1st, I think, is the Friday before the election.
I just think of weird things.
Yeah,
Did I
That
get
was
November
exactly
1st?
my question, actually, so we both think of weird things, and
that write-in date is crazy.
Noon on the 1st, yeah.
could we amend the resolution to state that if there is no,
I know this was
Right in.
brought up at the meeting, I think, because you had a problem with around November
Right, yep.
1st. But that's probably, it's going to be around that if something does develop.
But we can't put this resolution into motion if there's a write-in candidate that somehow becomes,
But we won't know for
That-
2 months.
Was it something like 1.7% of write-ins end up winning, or something like that?
It's not. I
but
don't
there is
think
a,
Trempealeau
but there is a
County
percent.
It's something I
We've
don't
ever-
worry about at this point. I don't want to wait until November 1st to start doing something. I mean, I would not be in favor of changing this.
Well, we have to get some ads out, or, get the job out, so it's. And basically, the reason we need to do this, January is really a busy time for
We need to do it tonight,
treasurer.
yes.
So it needs to.
I was just bringing up
Yeah,
a question that could be asked.
yeah.
In the unlikely, if I may speak.
Yeah.
In the unlikely event that that should occur, we would have enough time before our November county board meeting to add an agenda item, and then we could essentially rescind the resolution.
Yeah,
Oh, thank you. That's brilliant.
yeah, thank you for that.
Today?
If there are no more questions, we'll go ahead. We got a motion and second to approve the request for training a new deputy in the treasurer's office.
No, we got him already.
We got all that. I'm just
We got him already.
So that's what we're voting on. That-
We have Jeannie and Dawn.
let you get the next
No,
one, Heidi.
Jeannie and Renee already.
We have that motion and a second, so now what we're doing is voting on that motion, and you're just gonna do a roll call vote?
Dawn Waldera,
Yes.
Robert Becker,
Yes.
Renee Lyon,
Yes.
Helen Nelson.
Yes.
David Larson.
Yes.
Jeannie Nutter.
Yes.
Ron Johnson.
Yes.
Stacy Klein.
Yes.
Richard Sasha.
Yes.
Lori Severson.
Yes.
Andy Todd.
Yes.
Richard Anderson.
Yes.
Kevin Adams.
Yes.
Dick Miller.
Yes.
Kevin Whalen.
Yes.
John Austin.
Yes.
16-0.
Okay, item B, Environmental Land Use Committee, the rezone from transitional ag to residential for the Nipper Miller Trempealeau.
Whereas Michael H. Nepper and Teresa S. Nepper, James D. Nepper, and Elizabeth A. Muller, and Charles D. Muller, landowners, and Elizabeth A. Muller, petitioner, Trempealeau, Wisconsin, has requested the rezone of a parcel of land in the town of Trempealeau for the purpose of a land division. And whereas the rezone is on approximately 15.41 acres, more or less, and whereas a public hearing was held pursuant to section 59.69 parentheses 5 of the Wisconsin statutes, and whereas the town of Trempealeau supports the rezone request, and whereas the Environment and Land Use Committee moved to rezone this parcel from transitional ag, TA, to residential 8, R8, and it appears that the zoning change request is appropriate under the circumstances. Now be it resolved that the county adopt the attached ordinance amending the zoning district boundaries as indicated, introduced by Environment and Land Use Committee, Kellen Nelson, David Larson, Randy Severson, Stacy Klein, Andrew Todd, Kevin Whalen, and Anthony Munson.
Move to approve. Motion by Supervisor Nelson. Second by Supervisor Todd. Any questions at all? Anybody? Bird, you want to?
Since she's been sitting here all
Yeah.
night.
I hate to have you not do anything.
Well, I just want to share with you, this was a particularly interesting rezone. It was a long time coming. The property we're talking about is east of the village and south of the bike trail down there. And the road ended at the end of the village. So these people had basically no road frontage. It's great because they were able to work out a development agreement with the town of Trempealeau that if they ever do put a road in, basically the road will be on paper. And if they ever do put the road in, they have to bring it up to town standards for the town to adopt it. So they have their frontage basically on the survey and on paper, but it wasn't something they really have to put in right now if they don't choose to. So it worked out for everybody, and it was a great, great thing. It was great to see that. So, anyway, that's all I
Thank
have for you
you.
unless you have questions.
There was no issue with the public hearing or?
There was no opposition at the public hearing, no.
Okay, thank you. Everybody's familiar with the resolution, so we'll just call a roll.
Stacy Klein,
Yes.
Richard Seisha.
Yes.
Lori Severson,
Yes.
Andy Todd,
Yes.
Richard Anderson,
Yes.
Kevin Adams,
Yes.
Dick Miller,
Yes.
Kevin Whalen,
Yes.
John Austin,
Yes.
Don Waldera,
Yes.
Robert Becker.
He just stepped
He just stepped out.
Oh, I didn't see him go. Renee Lyon,
Yes.
Kellen Nelson,
Yes.
David Larson.
Yes.
Jeannie Nutter.
Yes.
Ron Johnson.
Yes.
Well, it'll be 15-0.
You can ask him later when he comes back in. We're at number 2, county conservation aids for Elk Creek Rod and Gun, for Elk Creek trout stocking.
Oh,
Here you come.
do you want to vote on that? Sure, yes. Okay. Now change it to 16-0. Okay. Whereas the legislature of the state of Wisconsin enacted legislation providing for allocation to respective counties on an acreage basis for the county fish and game projects on the condition that there is a local match for the state allocation. And whereas Trempealeau County desires to participate in county fish and game project pursuant to provisions of section 23.09, parentheses 12 of the Wisconsin statutes. And whereas the funds to be made available by the state for this project year are not likely to exceed $4,000, and a local private source has made commitment to provide the required local match for the state funds. And whereas the funds will be used for the purchase and stocking of rainbow trout at 2 locations along the Elk Creek. Now be it resolved that the Trempealeau County Board of Supervisors does hereby accept the local matching funds and the state funding for the project, and the funds to be placed into account number 101.43581 Conservation Aids. Introduced by Environment Land Use Committee, Kellen Nelson, Randy Severson, Stacy Klein, Andy Todd, David Larson, Kevin Whalen, Anthony Munson.
I'll second.
Motion by Supervisor Todd, seconded by Supervisor Nutter. Any discussion?
It was Todd.
No discussion at all? You've just heard the resolution, all those in,
Whoops,
Well,
we got
uh,
money.
yeah, it's gotta be a roll call.
Yep. Andy Todd,
Yes.
Richard Anderson,
Yes.
Kevin Adams.
Yes.
Dick Miller,
Yes.
Kevin Whalen,
Yes.
John Austin,
Yeah.
Don Waldera,
Yes.
Robert Becker,
Yes.
Renee Lyon,
Yes.
Kellen Nelson,
Yes.
David Larson.
Yes.
Jeannie Nutter.
Yes.
Ron Johnson.
Yes.
Stacy Klein,
Yes.
Richard Seisha.
Yes.
Lori Severson.
Yes.
16-0.
Okay, item C, UW Extension Education Communications Committee to accept Wisconsin Arts Board grant for extension programs.
Whereas UW-Madison Division of Extension, Trempealeau County received a grant for arts programming, and whereas these grant funds are intended to support county extension educators in their work with Latinx residents involved in folkloric dance 4-H program. And whereas Trempealeau County Extension was awarded this grant in the sum of $2,500. Whereas to receive and allocate these grant funds for UW Extension programming in Trempealeau County approval is therefore necessary. Now be it resolved that Trempealeau County accepts this grant award in the amount of $2,500, and to direct the amount of $2,500 be deposited in revenue account 101.46766, and allow Trempealeau County Extension access to these funds through Junto's non-lapsing expense account 101.55624.348. Introduced by UW Extension Education and Communications Committee. Andy Todd, Lori Severson, Richard Seisha, Kevin Adams, Don Waldera.
Move to approve.
Motion by Supervisor Waldera, second by Supervisor Adam. Am I taking that right? Okay. Any discussion at all on it? If not, call the roll.
David Larson.
Yes.
Jeannie Nutter.
Yes.
Ron Johnson.
Yes.
Stacy Klein.
Yes.
Richard Seicher.
Yes.
Lori Severson.
Yes.
Andy Todd.
Yes.
Richard Anderson.
Yes?
Kevin Adams.
Yes.
Dick Miller.
Yes.
Kevin Whalen.
Yes.
John Austin.
Yes.
Don Waldera.
Yes.
Robert Becker.
Yes.
Renee Lyon.
Yes.
Kellen Nelson.
Yes.
16-0.
Okay, item D, Parks, Tourism, and Economic Development Committee. Authorize application for urban forestry grant.
Whereas a review of needs and proposed enhancements at Petrick Park has identified a mitigation of the impacts of Highway 93 for the users of the park as a top priority. And whereas Parks, Tourism, and Economic Development Committee, upon recommendation from the Parks and Recreation Coordinator, has concluded that an aggressive tree planting initiative on the west side of the park could help screen park users from the noise and sight of passing cars on the highway. And whereas funding to assist with this tree planting initiative at the Petrick Park is available under the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources Urban Forestry Grant Program. Now be it resolved that Trempealeau County Parks and Recreation Coordinator is authorized to apply for the grant, and the county administrator is authorized to execute grant documents and sign other documentation as requested by DNR should the grant request be approved. Grant revenue will be received under account 101.46750 Urban Forestry Grant Revenue, and expenses shall be paid from the account 101.55202.730 Urban Forestry Grant Expense. Introduced by Parks, Tourism, and Economic Development Committee. Jeannie Nutter, Lori Severson, Buzz Sorgi, Kevin Whalen, Kevin Adams, Renee Lyon, and Bob Petrick.
Move to approve.
Motion by Supervisor Nutter. Second by Supervisor Lyon. Any discussion at all?
Mr. Chair, I have
Yes.
a question. How much land does the county own between where the camping units or the camping sites end as it moves towards the highway? And is there a set of tracks there?
Yeah.
Okay. How much, do you know how many feet of land that would be available for tree planting?
You're on.
I don't have the exact amount, but we're looking at land that, I believe land that was donated to the county by the Shanks, where we're looking at building a recreation play area for kids. So that's why we need to have some sort of berm. No matter what goes in that area, we need some sort of berm to, block, just like they said, block the traffic, the noise, from the. It is very noisy. Yeah.
Well, I guess I just curious. I'm not necessarily opposed to it. I'm just curious if there's enough space
There is.
there to
There
plant
is.
several rows of trees
There
to
is.
help break up that noise.
Yep, there is.
There's not trees gonna go along where the campers park now, that parking?
Yeah, well, there's all of those trees that were planted a few years ago, if you've been down there recently, are starting to get big and mature.
Okay.
So that once all of those trees mature on the right side of the park, as you're leaving, it's gonna be amazing. So.
Okay. If there's no other questions, we'll go with the vote. Oh.
Here, I can kind of answer your question about like
Oh,
how many feet.
yay.
So I walked it with Jack, the park coordinator, along with the Trempealeau County Forester earlier this year, and there is from the standard camping area right now, I would say there's at least 200 feet between those 200, and they were looking at least two to 3 rows. Right now, there is, I think, 2 or 3 rows there right now, so they would be like 10 feet apart. So there's plenty of room, and then even during Ashley time, when they extend that camping area, there is enough room for that additional camping as well, along before they get to those tree rows. So there is definitely plenty of room, and the forester definitely agreed and kind of planned it out with Jack and I on where those would be planted. So if that, I hope that answers your question there. Yeah.
Thank you. I wasn't aware of that myself, so that's good.
This one's just a voice vote because there's no money.
No money involved, so we can just go with a voice vote according to the clerk. So all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? None, that's carried. Highway Committee, county aid for bridge construction.
Whereas the various towns hereinafter named have filed petitions for county aid in the construction of bridges under Section 82.8 of Wisconsin statutes. Now be it resolved that the said petitions are hereby granted and the county share appropriated for the year 2025 as follows. And I did not get any of the petitions, but that's okay. I'll just read the name, the town, and then the name of the bridge and the county share. So Town of Arcadia, the Cyril Sabota, it's $1,970.23. The North Creek, $35,919.52. The Rainy Valley, $21,835.46. Stelmach Lane, $2,964.38. In the town of Burnside, Sizik Lane, $223.51. The Fila Valley, $5,963.22. Wolf, $5,543.13. Town of Ettrick, Hagsted, $1,266.35. Joe Cooley, $904.55. Lequi Lane, $2,491.56. Leon Lane, $7,578.37. Nordy Lane, $2,373.48. Rognus Cooley, $48,409.21. Town of Gale, Corey Road, $4,517.42. Winnebago, $3,213.84. Town of Hale, Powalki, $10,926.22. Town of Lincoln, Norma Lane, $5,395.83. And also the Richter, $4,616.97. Town of Pigeon, Hilma Lane, $2,889.37. Tillman Hanson, $3,997.68. The Town of Unity, Bowling, $1,084.40. And Peterson, $10,553.40. Grand total county share, $184,638.10.
Introduced by,
Oh. I didn't turn a page. Introduced by Trempealeau County Highway Committee, John Austin, Kellen Nelson, Rich Anderson, Dave Larson, Robert Becker.
move to approve.
Second.
Ooh, who got it? I think it was over here.
Okay, we'll go with
Nelson,
motion by Nelson, seconded by Becker, Supervisor Becker.
it was close.
Is there any questions at all on it? This is kind of an annual thing, bridge deals.
This usually doesn't come to county board until the November meeting, so
Yeah.
this is helping our budget a bit. Be
And-
getting caught up.
And it's matched by the townships have a match.
No, these bills are already paid, they're just
Yeah,
petitioning
yeah.
for the county's share. Yeah.
So anyway,
When
all
are
those
these,
in.
just
oh, we
real
gotta-
quickly, when is the petitions due by from the municipalities?
I think they usually come in a November deal, but
Yeah, so the highway committee is about 2 months ahead of time.
because we're fast.
So there's a due date, I guess, is what I'm wondering.
I don't know if there's actually a due date. It's just that we have to have the resolution at November. And since they're doing it 2 months early, that's good.
Okay, have the resolution, and we need to call the roll.
Ron Johnson.
Yes.
Stacy Klein.
Yes.
Richard Seixas.
Yes.
Lori Severson.
Yes.
Andy Todd.
Yes.
Richard Anderson.
Yes.
Kevin Adams.
Yes.
Dick Miller.
Yes.
Kevin Whalen.
Yes.
John Austin.
Yes.
Don Waldera.
Yes.
Robert Becker.
Yes.
Renee Lyon.
Yes.
Kellen Nelson.
Yes.
David Larson.
Yes.
Jeannie Nutter.
Yes.
16-0. Okay.
Item F, Audit Committee membership claims.
Members' claims, okay. Whereas the Audit Committee has audited the following claims and recommend that they be allowed as follows. John Austin, $1,241.78. Kevin Adams, $210.30. Richard Anderson, $270.35. Robert Becker, $274.12. Ron Johnson, $452.76. Stacy Klein, $278.64. David Larson, $281.32. Renee Lyon, $250. Dick Miller, $182.16. Kellen Nelson, $67.42. Jeannie Nutter, $561.22. Richard Seixas, $254.52. Lori Severson, 0. Andy Todd, $350.08. Bridget Turner, $757.28. Dawn Waldera, $296.90. Kevin Whalen, 0. Total per diems, $3,950. Total expenses, $1,778.85. Grand total, $5,728.85. Now be it resolved that the claims be allowed as shown, introduced by Audit Committee, John Austin, Don Waldera, Robert Becker.
Motion by Supervisor Nutter,
Second.
second by Supervisor Seixas. Any questions at all? We'll just call the roll.
Okay. Oh, look who's first.
Ooh.
John Austin,
Yes.
Don Waldera,
Yes.
Robert Becker,
Yes.
Renee Lyon,
Yes.
Kellen Nelson,
Yes.
David Larson.
Yes.
Jeannie Nutter,
Yes.
Ron Johnson.
Yes.
Stacy Klein,
Yes.
Richard Seixas.
Yes.
Lori Severson,
Yes.
Andy Todd,
Yes.
Richard Anderson.
Yes.
Kevin Adams,
Yes.
Dick Miller,
Yes.
Kevin Whalen,
Yes.
16-0.
Next item on the agenda is appointments, announcement and appointments. I know there's a citizen member. Do you have it? Oh.
I've got the thing. I know the letter that came, actually had the whole board on there, but all of them are appointed except the one, like it says on your agenda, to appoint a Veteran Service Commission to succeed Paul Bessler. And I'll read, I met with the VSC yesterday to talk about a situation and appointment of Brian Liga as the chairperson. We also discussed appointment of a new member. The VSC discussed several candidates and settled on one they agreed on. I reached out and spoke to this person and she has accepted. The new member of the Veteran Service Commission will be Jenna Pratt of Whitehall. This letter will act as her appointment notice. Commissioners serve for 3 years from the date of their appointment. And the one would be this Jenna Pratt. It says USA, which is the U.S. Army, Whitehall, and her telephone number. Respectfully, Joe Quackenbos.
Motion by Supervisor Nutter, looking for a second.
I'll second.
Second by Supervisor Waldera. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's carried. Correspondence. You have some
I
correspondence.
do, I have a card here that just showed up a couple hours ago, right? And it says, to all my colleagues on the Trempealeau County Board, thank you so much for thinking of me as I recovered from surgery. Your kindness and thoughtfulness means a great deal to me. You are the best. Many thanks, Jeannie Nutter. Love wins.
Well, that was nice. Thank you.
Hey, can I just say something quickly?
Yes,
So
go ahead.
Talk about the highway department.
P.S.
If you have not driven on Roscoe's Road, do it. It's all blacktop. It's beautiful. Shout out to the highway department. I love them for fixing that road. It was a disaster. So, thank you. Are you the chair? Who's the chair? John Austin. It's beautiful. You should all go drive on it.
Yeah, I did it all. No.
And the dump truck.
And they did it really fast, so I love it.
Okay. Item 11, looking for a motion to instruct the clerk to pay mileage and per diem.
So move.
Was that Supervisor Anderson?
Yeah, he
Oh,
skipped 9,
oh,
but that's
oh.
okay.
Was it Supervisor Anderson made the motion?
No,
Oh,
Seisha.
Oh, Supervisor
But you
Seisha?
skipped this one.
I did?
Seisha,
Oh,
who
committee,
else?
monthly reports. I skipped the monthly
It was
report. Sorry about
Johnson.
that.
Johnson and Sage.
But we got that motion, but I don't know. Should we vote on that before you go back to 9?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because you actually did 10 before 9 also.
Yeah.
Okay. Stacy Klein,
Yes.
Richard Seisha.
Yes.
Lori Severson,
Yes.
Andy Todd.
Yes.
Richard Anderson.
Yes.
Kevin Adams.
Yes.
Dick Miller.
Yes?
Kevin Whalen.
Yes.
John Austin.
Yes.
Don Waldera.
Yes.
Robert Becker.
Yes.
Renee Lyon.
Yes.
Kellen Nelson.
Yes.
David Larson.
Yes.
Jeannie Nutter.
Yes.
Ron Johnson.
Yes.
16-0. Okay, we got that. Now you can go
I
back.
skipped number 9, executive finance, monthly budgets, county sales tax, general overview. You got that in your packet. Any questions on it at all? Not? We can go to item 12, which is my favorite item on the agenda.
But announce this part too.
Okay, the next meeting is October 14th. It's at 6 PM, and that will be here in this room?
Correct.
Okay. And then also on October 21st,
That's a regular board
that's the
meeting.
regular board meeting coming up in October,
And the November.
and the November meeting on November 12th.
Yes, 10 a.m.
So, we can adjourn at 8:22.